Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Do we have any guests on the call or in person?
Scott Konzerski is here representing non-community, and then it looks like Eric Oswald just jumped on as well.
Oh, nice. That's great. Well, welcome.
Hey, buddy, Ian Smith is here as well.
Oh,
Corey Upper's here as well.
Okay, got it.
Steve King, representing Northern Michigan District Health Department.
Welcome. All right. Any additions or omissions from the agenda? Nobody? Okay. Everybody look at the meeting minutes from the last meeting. Anita did a great job again.
it
I
wasn't
looked at
me,
it.
buddy.
Was it you?
It was
You
our
get the credit?
secretary, Melissa.
Oh, Melissa, great job if you're listening. If not,
Got replaced as
Appreciate
a minute
it.
taker.
Thanks,
All right.
Anita.
it was awesome. Okay, anybody have anything they need to add or omit or changes on the minutes? We don't need an official vote, so we can move on to the EGLE update. Okay. So EGLE. That's Sarah
Good
Pearson.
afternoon. Good afternoon, and since Eric has joined us, I would like to open up the opportunity for Eric to say a few things if you'd like to.
Sure, yeah, it's been a while since I've been able to attend one of these in person, but I appreciate all the hard work this group does, and I'm looking forward to listening in this afternoon. We've got another meeting going on at the same time, so I'll probably sneak out of this one after about a half an hour or so, but appreciate all the hard work you all do.
All right. Thanks, Eric. So our big news, and it's also on the unfinished business list, but I have to say it now because we have been at it for a year. We have new cement rules. So, yay. And huge thank you to Eric for helping support us with the executive division, and big thank you to Dave DeYoung for championing this and helping us through this process. And of course, cooperation and collaboration with Buddy and MGWA and our health departments supporting us as well to make sure that we have an approved cement for use in well construction here in Michigan. Yay. And that's an easy rule. So anybody up for 10?
Rule at a time.
Yes. So anyhow, that's the biggest news we have. The other big news I have is that we are focusing even more on our data in WellLogic and getting that data right and getting the data in a timely manner. And so Anita has been promoted to full-time WellLogic analyst. Woo-hoo!
Kind of.
Reg, are you gonna have like an inaugural ball or anything like that, or no?
Way to
Celebration?
go, Anita.
Woohoo!
He's registered at Macy's for gifts or anything?
Right. So there's a bit of a transition as far as some of our other duties, but definitely we are focusing on this, and we have also hired 2 contractors through MPHI via DHHS funding to have 2 analysts help and work on some of those problem locations that the Michigan Geological Survey has difficulty locating. They have their process that they go through, and they try to locate wells and do validation. Yep, the lat long location validation information. And so if MGS cannot get that in, within 5 minutes or so, they put it into a problem file. And so we have quite a collection. So I've got 2 analysts who are starting with us. One started last week, another one starts on Monday. So Natalie and Isaac be starting and looking at those to see if we can get better locations on those. The ones that we have them starting out on are the ones that are not even in the county. And so we're taking on that effort to get our data in better order. And also we will be implementing mechanisms to ensure that our data will be better going forward. So one thing I'm going to ask of our group and to share this with others is that our 2 analysts will be reaching out and contacting whether it's the drilling contractor who installed the well, because there's some information that may be illegible, it may be hard to read, it might be missing, GPS is relatively recent considering the age of our well logs. Or maybe reaching out to our local health partners, asking if there's any permitting information that might be able to glean where those wells are located. So we ask that you help us out with that, and so we can get better information. We don't want to make a change and have somebody be startled by it. We want to be able to reach out and ask the source of truth of the information if they have that information.
And what records are these going forward, or is this for, they're gonna look at everything, or,
They're looking at everything.
okay,
And they're also entering the data that we get on paper records more timely than what we have had. And we are also promoting digital data entry. Enter the data into WellLogic, and it only has to be touched once by somebody if we have the individuals who have created the data, they input the data in there, and it's more likely to be accurate, and we don't have to do some translating. So really, we are promoting you enter the data into WellLogic as our way to submit the logs. It's very valuable. It's valuable on our side. It's valuable on your side. It saves time for everybody and saves dollars so that they can be spent their things. And I think we have a few other outreach efforts. I don't see Kathy on here, but we will be doing some more outreach as far as a quarterly update for questions and information and communication tools. And we're going to try this webinar style, so maybe a half-an-hour webinar quarterly. And from the well construction, and we're going to try this, like I said, webinar, and we talked about maybe newsletter. We will see what we could post on our website. So we're looking at some more outreach and communications, regular communications, to be able to talk with everybody. And they would be recorded, so you can follow them up if you weren't available and you have access to them. So those are some ideas and some things boiling, bubbling here. And I think I'll leave it at that. Like Mike, you got a question?
Yes. I'm a little bit concerned about data safety. There's so much scuttlebutt going around now. I'm not too worried about the Chinese weather balloon satellites, but cameras looking at us. But I am kind of concerned about hackers and maybe not necessarily the Russians, but making sure that our data is safe and not readily available to get corrupted by anybody. I'm not a techie. I'm not a tech support guy, but I do worry about my data. So that's the only question I had.
Yes, we worry about our data too. And I have been to Command Central at DTMB, who is monitoring our data and monitoring everything that we have as far as our digital world, and it's very impressive to see how many hits are attempted by hackers and that they're able to thwart them, and they spend an awful lot of time, energy, and money trying to make sure that the systems are safe. And that's why you have protections like my login and other security ID type things that we are trending towards. If you try to renew your driver's license, you use the My Login system. That's why we're going to those kinds of systems to be able to have better control of our data.
Like there are thousands of attacks against the state every day.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, Bonnie, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm glad to see that EGLE is reaching out on handwritten logs to the originator of the log, because when it really comes down to it, that's a legal document signed by the driller, and any changes made without his permission is actually almost against the law. In other words, he could deny any responsibility for what's on that log after it's been changed. So if I was that man, I would say that's a good idea to maybe have a paper trail. If you do that, or some sort of verification that you ask permission, this change has been made. It's easy and well logic, because we all just, email Anita and say, hey, change this distance and change this, and then she's got that email and the record. But calling somebody, there's no record, so there should be something. And I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill, but I'm just looking down the road 10 years and somebody's saying, I never authorized this. My record says this. Yours says that. Follow me?
Right. And we can definitely implement a follow-up email once they've, called somebody, said, hey, I'm seeing this on the record. Doesn't look right to me. Can you verify this? And if you can help us with communicating with your members, as well as we'll be communicating with those who aren't members of MGWA, that we will follow up with an email and say, we've had this conversation. This is what we said. Can you confirm that this is the right location, based on our conversation?
I like
Yeah,
that idea.
It's
Wonderful.
I mean, for us to, I totally get what you're saying, buddy, but it's not practical for us to, every time we fix a well location because the driller put down something crazy and accurate, to contact that driller to say, I'm changing your well location because what you provided is way off and we're gonna move it. I mean, it's not practical for us to do that. Now, all
I agree with
changes
you
to
on
well
that.
records are all tracked on the server. Everything is, if a driller, my record was changed, and I can look it up, and I've never been questioned about anything that got changed or
I'm
ever.
more concerned with not necessarily that kind of change, but if they're reading a hand log and they can't
Oh,
distinguish like a depth of a casing or how many hours they pumped it, a pumping level, geology, something like that. I'm more concerned with that as far as well construction than I am well location.
okay.
That's fair.
Not necessarily well logic logs either. It's more the handwritten ones that they're inputting. Let's make sure that that input is accurate, true to the hand log.
And it's all the more reason for drillers to stop doing handwritten logs. I mean, it's ridiculous that they're still doing that. Especially when they use WellLogic to search for records, they use WellLogic to renew their registration, yet they still submit handwritten paper logs. So, yeah, yeah. I'll get off my soapbox.
Give her a new title and look at this.
I know. I'm more mouthy than I've been before,
But you're not incorrect. So, on to, Sarah, if you're done, is that the EGLE update we have so far on AFCA scam? The only thing I see here is marijuana grow facilities, and I sent a letter, drafted a letter just before our last meeting that went out to all members. And I think I shared that with Dave. Basically, just making them aware that when you're in a marijuana grow facility, they're rapidly changing and they're ever growing, and we could have a facility that is basically a 5-person facility and in another 8 months be a 35-person facility. And now their well that they're using to flush the toilets and make coffee is now a type 2. And we need to be aware of that when we're drilling these wells and look at these isolation distances. So, and other things, you know, chemical storage, so on and so forth. So that went out. Basically, there's nothing in the rules right now that kind of niches marijuana grow. So I think it's on local public health and the well drillers to kind of be a little bit more prudent when they're out doing site visits and actually even out doing service after the fact a year or 2 down the road or 3 or whenever it is. So, and we'll keep beating that soapbox until we can get a handle on this. We're on Michigan Groundwater Association, Michigan Association of Local Health Administrators, Michigan Environmental Health Association, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, EGLE training, outreach, open to all. Who wants to take that? I'll take it. So we had our board meeting here last month, and Dave Schulenberg is going to be reaching out to Miha Maliha, and we're going to talk about basically reciprocity memberships. And we would like to have all of our members attend, if we can, or a few of our members attend our events, those events, as well as their members attend our events, so we can have an outreach and training that is ongoing, not just a once a year thing, but maybe put together some training sites around the state. Matter of fact, I'm working with Dave and Tweak right now on a finish of a training video that hopefully we'll be able to talk about soon. And I think it's going to help the whole industry, because with the digital age, I think we can do a lot of this stuff if we can get a video and then some of this training going, so we can further our industry. Because now that we're getting well drillers that are misinformed and mistrained, but sanitarians, as we all know, is sometimes a high turnover, and I think they get a bad rap, in my opinion, because they go out as naive as they are, and we've all been there in our first day at work, or our first year, or our first 2 years, and they get beat up by some old gruff well driller or a guy having a bad day, and I don't think that's right. I think a little bit of knowledge, and at least to be able to talk the lingo and understand what's going on is going to help them maybe break the ice with the driller or the installer, or even on a final inspection when they pick up that phone to call and say, I'm a little confused about this or that. And I think it's only going to help us. Dave, did you have anything to add to this at all? Or
Actually, I wanted to give Dan Mylan, if he, I know he's in Utah and his reception maybe isn't all that great, but maybe give him the opportunity to talk a little bit about the EGLE district engineer training that his group was able to offer.
I'm here, David. I want to thank EGLE for giving us the opportunity to partner in the education, and it started out with what we could work with the new engineers, and they just embraced. It was Andrew and Brandon embraced the idea. We brought in Williams and Works, Dan Whalen and Don Barron, and put on a well construction discussion in the morning, and then we brought in an engineering Headwaters engineered systems personnel to talk about line shaft and submersible turbines, and doing a little bit reading on the pump curves. And Mr. Buddy came in and talked about different drilling methods And we finished up with some of the new technologies and advanced products that are coming and hitting the market as far as energy efficiencies. Buddy, you can mention what your thoughts were, but we were very happy with the attendance, the opportunity. It was an awful lot to put into one day, and I think we were just blessed for that day. So, do you have anything to add, buddy?
Yeah, it was very well put together. I was glad to see the well construction unit there. Sarah, Dave, and Kathy were there. Sweet was there. But it also opened my eyes that how big EGLE is, and even as large as EGLE is, I think it's important that this type of education continues, because there were
Well,
some very, I want to say, hair stood up on the back of my neck with some of the things that was being discussed, which is fine, and that's okay. And that's what those meetings are for, is to clarify some of those things. And I think we did a good job of handling it. But it just goes to show you that I think an education, not just from the bottom up, but from the top down, program is necessary to continue it, because a lot of times that municipal world is a world all its own. And when you're talking about that world, they talk their own lingo, they talk their own talk, and you also get a lot of contractors from outside of the state of Michigan coming in and doing work in that municipal world. And it's a little bit foggy when they say, well, we've always done this in Ohio, we've always done it in Indiana. Well, this is Michigan. I'm sorry, but our rules and regulations are a little bit different. So some of the things that are allowed there or not allowed there are allowed here, that, and so on and so forth. So it's not just an application, but it's also a regulation necessity to have these discussions to say, hey, remember, this is what we do here. This is why we do it here. Here's the reasons behind it. So I was happy to say that when I asked how many people had seen a well being drilled, the room lit up. There was a lot of hands that went up. So that was very encouraging to me. I think it's just going to help us all, our whole industry, to be honest with you. And I think that we need to take our hats off to Island and Ellie for putting this on. And I think it's much needed. I'd like to see it at least on a yearly basis, if nothing other than to maybe branch off. Say, one year we talk about construction, the next year we talk about regulation, and maybe the next year we go back over the same thing again. We kind of have some focused conversations within that. So, Dave, if you were there, what did you think of it?
I thought it was an excellent training, and I actually learned quite a bit as far as new motor technology, and even some of the pump out there. Was very informative. I thought it was really good.
Want to thank Sarah and
Go ahead, Dan.
Is very interested in facilitating that type of need for the industry. So we're trying to reach out and backdate a little bit and ask, what in addition can we do? Should we put together a time and start looking at next year on not necessarily expanding it, but just keeping it going? We also are in discussion on having a group available, some specialists and experts available, that as something comes up as questions in the industry, that it can basically be shared and find someone to give a educated opinion or direction on questions in the industry. So we were very, very happy. The only thing is I lost my job. I'm headed out west for 3 months. So I'm happy.
I wouldn't say lost your job would be the proper term. Do you, Dan?
No, I get to bring in a new resume in September.
Dan, thank you. We really appreciate it. And have fun. You're going to end up in Alaska if I'm not right.
Yes, yep, headed Oregon, then up to Alaska, Fairbanks in 3 weeks.
Awesome. Have a good time and be safe. We'll look for you this fall.
Thank you.
All right. We're on to 6D, status of PFAS contamination in Michigan. Mr. Smith? Here.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I just want to give a quick update today. There had been some interest during the last meeting for well information related to the 7 supplies in Michigan that have had MCL exceedances. I just want to share my screen real quick here, if you don't mind. If I can do it without error, my apologies. Okay, so these are the 7 supplies listed here. They are represented by 12 individual wells. I pulled the well logs for those. And there's a variety of details for each. And I've done my best to kind of chart these out. So this first graph here shows the 12 different wells on the x-axis, and the y-axis is the depth of each well. The first 2 down in the lower left, those did not have well depth information available. But you can see from the rest that they do vary in depth quite a bit from the 30-ish foot level all the way up to over 200 feet, depending on which supply we are looking at. The other chart that I have here represents the drilling method for each of the 12 wells broken down. As you can see, there's a good representation here across different techniques. For 3 of them, there was no information available, unfortunately, but the rest were distributed across rotary, cable tool, and augured. Going back to this sheet here, looking at what is there at the screening depth, you can see in this column, there was not a great deal of information available for all of the wells, but for those where it was available, I've included that here. I need to polish this spreadsheet up a little bit more, but I'd like to provide it to the group just because it was requested last time. I apologize. It took me a little bit of time to gather this, but I wanted to share it with you today. More generally speaking, let me turn my screen share off here. I'll mention that back in late March, US EPA published their proposed federal maximum contaminant levels for PFAS. EGLE spent 60 days putting together our reviewing those proposed levels and then putting together our comments on them. And I can summarize those. For the most part, the numbers we are fairly okay with. They're lower than Michigan's numbers in many cases, but the compounds included, theirs is a list of 6 PFAS compounds, ours is a list of 7. All 6 that were proposed, we have MCLs for, so there's some consistency there. We did ask them to consider that 7th compound for which Michigan has an MCL. Most of our comments and questions centered around the way that these MCLs are going to be enforced. The EPA is utilizing a trigger level to determine sampling frequency for each individual supply. That trigger level is 1/3 of the corresponding MCL, which raises some questions about the ability of every lab to detect to such a low level in a reliable way. We've asked the EPA to consider looking at a slightly higher trigger level of half of the MCL, which would put it right in the same ballpark as the requirements in Michigan's Safe Drinking Water Act. And we've also asked them to alternately explain how they plan to well, how they expect every state to utilize that lower trigger level to determine sampling frequency. I think that is pretty much everything I have. As far as groundwater sampling goes, oops, I'm getting a little bit of an echo. Let me mute my speaker real quick here. As far as groundwater sampling goes, MPART is continuing to add to its list of sites under investigation and areas of interest. Last I had heard, they're at 276 individual sites or areas across the state for which they have or will collect groundwater samples for analysis for PFAS. That list is available on the MPART website, and they do update that on a regular basis. Most of the data, if it's not available under a direct link there, is pretty easily obtained. And if you're curious about any particular sites or regions of the state, please let me know. I'd be happy to help you get a hold of that data. All right, I'm going to turn my speakers back on now. Thanks. All right, that's all I've got. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Anybody have any questions? I have one. It's more informational. Are there, I know there are, how many municipalities are close to a contamination plume? And is EGLE concerned that because it's a municipal well, that because they're a larger volume, that they might pull that plume towards that well?
That's a really good question. I don't have a number available, but I do know that in each individual case, that sort of consideration is being taken into account. So yeah, we don't really have I don't have a kind of a quick answer to your question, but I do know that those site investigation teams and those site managers and those regional leads do take that into consideration as they assess what the situation is below the surface. That is something I can look into a little deeper, though, if you'd like.
The reason I'm bringing it up, and I don't want to get too far out in the weeds with this group in it, but at some point, remediation side of EGLE and the water side of EGLE are going to have a conversation about, instead of plugging wells, let's use them to remediate some of this product out of the ground, because it's going to come to a point that we're going to be pulling contamination one way or another in the state of Michigan, especially where you have some hot, and the cleanup's going to have to take precedence. I go back to Parchment, some of those where they plug the municipal wells, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you got a conduit right there with contamination. Why not just keep it open and let's remediate? But that's a discussion for a later date. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. We're going to move on to new business. Contractor examination information. Dave.
Yeah, I received some information from Kathy I just wanted to share. The first thing before going through exam information is she did pass along to me some information about the renewal cycle. which is basically ended April 30th. Invoices, for those that, haven't, renewed will be sent out July 1st. We have 58, well drillers and 5 pump installers that are currently in non-renewal and expired. We also have 14 well drillers and 1 pump installer that have, not paid 3 years and are retired and or, deceased. So just wanted to kind of pass, that information on. As far as the examination goes, they did exam over a 2-day period in April. We had 4 new folks taking exam and 2 retakes. 8 well drillers, 6 pump installers, the new, and then 2 well drillers for retakes. Out of those 16 people, we ended up 4 that had failed and 1 pump installer. And it looks like our next exam is going to be September 22nd. And that's,
Nice. So can you repeat how many well drillers you said did not renew?
yeah. 50, as far as non-renewals, ones that expired April 30, 58 well drillers and 5 pump installers.
Oh, that's a larger
And-
number than I would.
And then expired, you know, basically no payment for 3 years or retired, deceased, 14 well drillers and 1 pump installer.
Wow.
I'm gonna just jump in here. So one thing that I get in Well Logic, if a driller submits a well record into Well Logic during the time that he's not registered, I get an alert. And I just had one, I mean, I get them periodically all the time, but I got one just the other day and I looked and I was like, yep, they didn't renew. So I sent him an email. I said, hey, you know, I got this alert, you're not registered, you gotta register. And like 3 days later, they emailed back and said, oh yeah, I just found it in my stack of papers. I'll try to do that in a day or 2. And I'm just like, so I responded back to him and I said, you know, you really need to be on top of this more because all the work that you've done in May and part of June is now illegal because you weren't registered. So I just think, and that's happened with other guys. I think some of them just don't take it all that seriously. You know, they'll just renew it when they get around to it and they don't realize that the work that they've done is all illegal work. So I don't know what we can do about that. It happens all the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a well drill jail. I tell the guys all the time, I gotta do well logs or I'm gonna go to well driller jail. Or I gotta do this or I'm gonna go to well driller jail. Some of these guys don't take it serious enough, and I agree with you. How do we fix it? Well, we know how we fix it. We fix it in the rules down the road, but
We
I don't know.
we raise the registration fee about
Yeah.
tenfold, and that'll get probably a couple hundred of them to go out of business.
Well, there's probably a couple hundred of them that aren't in business that just pay for it to keep their registration.
Yeah, they do, because it's only $40.
Right. Well, unfortunately, that's where we're at. I think we're gonna let the guy sitting next to you talk now, Brad. He's gonna talk for about an hour and a half, aren't you, Brad?
Yeah, we're starting to get up there. So I'll go back to the oldest enforcement case we have. Our contested case is still, a contested case. We have we're proceeding through it, so the proceedings are going. We're just kind of following what the regulations say that has to go through. Hopefully we'll get a determination in the near future. Then we had another individual that looked like they were gonna go to a contested case. That individual, we had our attorney reach out for one final, kind of come to Jesus talk to say, hey, you know, we're going to court if we don't come to an agreement. They reached back out, expressed some concern over the agreement. Some of it was founded, some of it wasn't. We resent that agreement out and we're waiting to hear back from them on whether or not they'll sign. Hopefully that'll be later this week. Last spring, spoke to driller for consent violations, and last month he went out and drilled a well. So I went up there, detective, and hand delivered a cease and desist letter, explained to him that he can't do any well drilling or pump work. A couple days later, he was out doing pump work. But he had a plumbing company, master plumber, write to EGLE and say, he is working under my master plumber license. So we just have to keep an eye on him.
Well, and he can't do any drilling.
Yeah, you can't do it, but. And then, we initiated an enforcement action, against a driller in northern Michigan who has a whole plethora of violations. It's easier to document what he didn't violate rather than what he did. So we'll see where that goes, once we get the letter out and we get some contact from them. And we are in the process of denying a renewal registration. That is a similar incident where the individual basically opened up the well code and said, what are EGLE's criteria to deny my registration? I'm going to do every one of them. So we're in legal ground with that one. Any questions on that?
One. The second individual you talked about, is that in Southwest Michigan where he had to resend the consent agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, all I want to know. Anybody have any questions on enforcement actions or
I
want to
think
turn
Eric
me in
had
or
something.
anything?
I think Eric has his
Yeah,
hand
Brad,
up.
you said up north. How far up north?
Not up by you, tip of the mitt.
Okay, just checking.
Are you
Yeah,
worried,
you're up
Eric?
north, right? Yeah. Well, I like to kind of keep track and know what's going on in my area, and I
Oh,
don't know
gotcha.
many
Okay.
things, so that's good.
It's not in the 906.
Nobody's
Perfect,
given
that's
me
all
an
I need to
excuse
know.
to come visit yet, so.
Well, we'll call it the 989 then.
Good. I think we've done a good job. It's like 1:45, and we're on to other business or comments.
Well, I wanted to provide one more update. It
Comments?
wasn't
Go
on
ahead, I'm sorry.
contractor enforcement, but it is related to that realm. I know last meeting I said we're working on coming up with our internal procedures on how we handle that. And I would provide an update to everyone on how that's going. I kind of got what I think is appropriate. And we're gonna kick it over to the AG's office and have them make sure that I'm not breaking the law on what I think is appropriate. Have hopefully a publication that we can kick out to everybody, and that way there'll be some good communication on what EGLE's enforcement process is.
Nice. Sorry to interrupt you here. Anybody have any other enforcement questions, comments? I will make a comment. And this committee, the well drivers on this committee, needs to spread the word that the number one violation is well log issues. Number one, and it's usually late logs. And I've been guilty of a late log or two myself, but there's no excuse, really. I mean, other than somebody taking the paper or taking the log and you forgetting you drilled the well. And I don't even think that is an excuse because you look back at your books and see that you got paid for the well, or that you billed for the well, so you need to do it. So we need to spread the word to our colleagues that get those well logs in, get them in accurate, get them in on time, because number one, it helps us all. Number two, you got to be a pretty bad apple to get over on Brad's desk. And I don't mean by bad apple as a bad person. You just got to be negligent, don't care, it's not important to you. And we need to spread that word too, because my opinion, and this is my opinion, the chairman's opinion, not of this committee, is that we need to raise the professional level of our industry 2 or 3 notches. Okay. So they don't have a lot of, to be honest with you, Brad, I wish we didn't have to have you. That's the honest truth. But it's a fact. So, and it's a sad fact. So, to move on, we're on other business comments. John Schmidt, I always give you a little bit of time to say something here. I know you're on the phone. You got any other comments or business you want to talk about? John? Can you hear us? Probably can't hear us because John's using that silent. Okay. So new agenda items for next meeting. We are supposed to have a meeting somewhere in August, right, Dave?
You mean the next meeting for the committee?
Yeah.
July, August, September, so 3 months would be September 8th.
Buddy?
I would prefer September. John, was that you?
Yeah, finish what you're doing. I had a bad phone. I've got a better one now.
Well, go ahead, and if you got comments you want to make, I know I like.
Well, I'm sometimes Anita and I don't agree on everything, but I certainly agree with her. You've got guys that they say, well, I couldn't find my invoice. It was in a stack of stuff. They're bad businessmen. They're probably pretty good drillers, but they're bad businessmen. They're probably that far behind invoicing their customers. I knew a guy in our area who was a registered pump installer. He took $200,000 worth of business into the grave with him, never billed it. And so nothing has changed in 50, 60 years. It's very frustrating, and I can understand Anita's frustration. I don't see how we're going to change it. But nothing has happened since the first year we had to renew. Nothing is new.
Okay. At this moment, I have some things that I'm discussing with Dave, whether to bring them up to this committee or not, which has to deal with a pressure switch. But I don't have too much of an agenda item for the next meeting unless somebody else does. I just assume if this committee is okay with it, push it off till September later, because to be quite honest, the demand for the well drillers that are on this call and the rest of us is high, and the supply is getting lower. So we want to make sure, and it's 58 on renewals lower, according to myself, and 14 of them plus 1 are going to be permanent. So I think that the best way to handle agenda items is if something comes up, we need to get it to Dave and Anita or Sarah, and let's get them on the agenda. And like everything else, you know, it's landslide. Something's going to come up. Sure. Something will come up. And Tony, if I'm talking to Tony Drought right now, when I'm talking, if our organization has not reached out to your organization, I want to know about it here in the next couple of weeks, because we want to make sure that we start our communication. Okay.
The we have a meeting next week. I haven't heard from anyone from your organization. I was gonna bring that up at the end if you asked for questions, but I don't know if Dan's still on the call or not. I know we talked about that maybe 3 meetings ago. Our meetings are the third Thursday of the month. And so we're full for next week, but certainly if you had time, for the July agenda, I could put you on that and, we have a virtual option and we usually meet at the Michigan Banking Association building over here on Grand Boulevard.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, okay. Yeah, please do if you would include me, and then I will make sure that Dave reaches out and we'll get the membership information started, okay?
Do you want to be on the agenda to just talk about educational opportunities? Is that what?
Yes, I would, please, yes. I think it's important, yes. Next meeting date. September. Anybody have a problem with the 21st?
Yeah.
That sound good to the committee?
Buddy, hold on.
No.
That's that third Thursday. I think you said you had your.
But, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, it's early this year, so Rams. Oh, it's the 13th, it's the 21st.
Okay, good. Sorry, Tony,
I'm hearing it, okay. What did you say, Dave?
the 21st still works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right.
You'll be here.
So 1 o'clock on the 21st.
Yep. Okay. Anybody have any other questions or concerns? Forever hold your peace. All right.
I just had one thing. If we come up with items before September 21st that we want to add to the agenda, what is the process to introduce that?
Just send an email to Dave or myself,
Okay.
either one.
And you can even call me if you want. You can
Yep.
call or email me. It's fine.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, it was nice to hear or see from everybody. I appreciate it. And hooray, we got some cement we can work with. Yay. So everybody have a good day. Meeting's
Thanks,
adjourned.
buddy.
Yep.
Thank you. See you guys.
Thank you.